morning and welcome to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here along with the silent assassin Matt Costa. It's just the two of us tonight. Stephanie Burke is out. Matt Moniz is out. But that's all right because we're here for you. And we will be here to talk with you about the paranormal, which is what we do each and every Saturday night. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of paranormal things tonight because we have joining us a little bit later on Greg and Dana Newkirk. You know them from Planet Weird. You know them from the Traveling Museum of the Occult and the Paranormal, the Paranormal Occult. I got to make sure I say it in the right order. And you know them from, you've seen them on television. You've seen them online. You've seen them all over the place. And Dana is one of the, I don't know if you know this, Matt, but Dana is one of the founding paranormal TV stars.
Is she?
Oh, yeah. She had a show in Canada before Ghost Hunters was even on TV.
Really?
So maybe we'll talk to her a little bit about that. They every once in a while, you know, Hulu, I think, adds it to their streaming. It's called The Girly
really?
Ghost Hunters, yeah.
Oh, was it one of the first, I guess, all-female TV
probably.
investigator shows?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's something we can't even get on television now. People complain. By the way, that leads me to the first thing that I want to talk about tonight. That casting call that we posted.
Yep.
Well, that I posted. It's very rare that I post something on the Spooky South Coast Instagram. Like all that witty, creative stuff, that's all Matt. He does all that. But so I posted that casting call up because the production company reached out to me. They're working with somebody that I know and trust, and I was asked to help out and spread the word because they're looking for a particular person for that show. They're looking for a male paranormal investigator who has a focus on the historical research, but also a focus on the technology. So I get the email. Of course, I think they're talking about me, right? Obviously.
Right, of course.
But, you know, I sent some clips along, and they're like, well, maybe you could share that around anyway, just in case we don't decide to. So I was like, okay, I get it.
Right.
It's because I have a beard and because I'm fat. But anyway, so they asked us if we could share it around. So I posted it up on all of our social media thinking, you know, that's the best way to reach people. We know all kinds of people in the paranormal world. They like us. They follow us on social media. So this is the best way to do it rather than, you know, try to single out people and find them on my own and recommend them and say, hey, maybe you should contact these people. And I just don't have that kind of time anyway. So I put it up on social media and we just started getting killed from people. Why does it have to be a guy? Women research the paranormal too. I know. And I support that. And I don't know if you're new to the show or not, but we've talked to plenty of female paranormal researchers. We have one every week on the show as a co-host. She's just under the weather tonight. But that didn't stop people who know us, by the way, not just like random listeners who, you know, we've never interacted with. People that we know.
It's not your casting call.
And that's what it is. It's a casting call. When they put out a casting call for a fictional show and they say we're looking for a 48-year-old woman with red hair, you know, somewhere in the range of 200 to 250 pounds, nobody starts complaining like, that's ageist, that's sexist,
right.
That's, you know, what's it when they complain about it? Body shaming. You know, like nobody comes out and starts making all those complaints because it's a casting call for a particular role. And when people are on television or in the movies or in a play or what have you, there are certain roles and certain people that have to play those roles.
Right. They're looking for something specific.
So that's what this casting call was all about. Now, the company, Painless Productions, said we will take other, you know, photos and videos and you know, resumes and what have you, and from anybody else that wants to put one in. But for this particular casting call, they need a person. And they need a person because they've already got other people for the show. So it's not like the show is only going to be about this male, age 38 to 43, whatever the qualifications were. The show is not just about that person. They just need somebody who fits that demographic to put into what they already have going on. And that's what they want. They want, I'm not this particular show, I'm not trying to speak for it, but in general, television wants to have representations of as many different demographics as they can, so that people that are watching it have somebody to identify with. So I don't think Larry Glick is still kicking around, Bart. I'm sorry. I do remember Larry Glick, though. I remember my dad driving around, listening to it, and doing impressions of Larry Glick, too. And he used to like to do impressions of the Larry Glick callers, which was always funny. Tim Bohannon. We have huge Jim Bohannon fans here at WBSM. We're not on WBSM right now because the football game is, but we are streaming live on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com. And if you go to our website, you can see the show. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can see the show. You can actually watch what's going on in the studio, which for tonight will mostly just be me, because it's just myself and Matt. Matt never puts a camera on himself. And even if he did, all you would see is him furiously doing things over there. A
lot of clicking.
A lot of clicking.
Click 'em.
It's almost like you could be the clickacy.
Yeah.
That's a little plug there for Bart L. By the way, if you do enjoy the show and you want to talk with people during the week about the show or just about some of the topics that we discuss here, anything weird and woo, as Bart likes to say, then just go to lgab.com. And you can sign up there, and you can even use a screen name. You don't have to use your real name. We all have what was the phrase that was used earlier? We all have code names on LGAB if you want to join up there, and you can keep the discussions going all week long. And while you're there, there's some ads, and help out and click those ads, because right now this month, clicking those ads help keep that site going so that people can meet up there and talk about all kinds of strange things. But then also every other month it goes to, not every other month besides this one, but every other month, 1 month for the site and then 1 month to a great cause, to a good charity. So you're doing your part to help numerous people. I know last month they were helping animals that were displaced by the wildfires. So just go there and click and listen. If you like the show, if you like Spooky South Coast, and you go to our website and you go to LGAB this month, one of the ads that you'll see is for our store. We now have products in our store. People have been asking for products. We don't have glass bowls or CBD oil or any of the other products like you hear. What else do they talk about on paranormal shows? What else do they promote? We don't have any. What else do they? No super beta prostate formula. None of that stuff. And nope, it's just all kinds of stuff with our logo on it. So you can get shirts. You can get sweatshirts. People have been asking us for hoodies for years. You can get those. You can get baseball shirts, tank tops, all those kind of things. Then you could also get cell phone cases. You could get laptop covers and tablet covers and all that stuff.
You could fully represent Spooky South Coast.
Right. More than we do, I should point out.
Right.
There's people out there now that have ordered like the complete package of like merchandise materials. I'm like, you love this show more than we do.
I have a black car now. I think I'm going to get some decals.
The Spooky South Coast decal, it's only like $250 to get the decal.
I'm going to get a giant one for my hood.
You can actually get bigger ones made. You're going to do it like a Firebird with the Spooky South Coast logo?
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
It'd be badass.
Actually. I'll never forget, and everybody out there will start asking us if we have any more, and we don't. But the bumper stickers were always hugely popular when we first started doing the show, and we had the bumper stickers, and we would give them out to people, and we used to bring them to like if we did a lecture somewhere or whatever, we'd bring the bumper sticker.
But people don't really use bumper stickers anymore.
No, that's why I went with the decals.
Yeah, they want stickers for their laptops and stuff.
And they want to put the sticker. Yeah, put your sticker on your laptop. Put your sticker on your even on your car window. But nobody wants to put a bumper sticker on their car. So I'll never forget, though, the first time I'm driving and I saw a car with a spooky South Coast bumper sticker on it. I was like, whose car is this? Like, I wanted to follow them to their house. So that was my plan.
Yeah.
Was I was going to follow them because I forget where I was going, but I was on the road that leads to my house.
Right.
And it was a white van and it had a spooky South Coast bumper sticker on the back bumper. And I was like, oh, I'm going to follow them and I'm going to see where they go and I'm going to see who gets out of the car. And then I thought to myself, that's a bad idea because if they have the spooky South Coast bumper sticker on their car, they probably listen to the show.
Mm-hmm. And
they probably would know who I was. And then they would probably freak out because why the hell is Tim Weisberg following me to my house?
You just like knock on their window and be like, do you want me to sign your car?
That would have been a very good marketing strategy for us if we had thought of it at the time. 13 years ago, if we had said, what we're going to do is we're going to find the 5 people that listened to the show back in 2006. We're going to find the 5 people and we're going to follow them home and we're just going to just be there for them, whatever they need. Total dedication to our 5 listeners. If we had done that, we probably would have grown far faster than we did.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not too late. We could still follow people home. We could still go to their houses. I did something today that was very weird. I went to a store. I was cleaning my car, which is weird for me because how many times have I done that in all the time that you've known me? I would usually clean a car the first time I bought it, like when I first bought it, and then I would never clean it again.
Right.
But this one was clean when I bought it, so I felt obligated now, 2 years later, to clean it. So I'm cleaning my car, and I went to the store to go get some car cleaning materials, and the girl cashier was like, whoa, you're cleaning your car, it's kind of cold out to clean your car. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I got to do it. And she was talking to me about how she's a neat freak and how she just loves to clean, and like she cleans all day, like she goes over her friends' houses and just starts cleaning her friends' houses for no reason. And I looked at her and I said, will you come and clean my house?
Yeah.
And she said, actually, I would, because I'm looking for extra money, so if you need me to come and clean your house, I will. And then I thought to myself, I just invited a perfect stranger to come to my home. A person who's just a cashier in a store.
Yeah. I
don't know anything about her.
But your house is going to be clean.
But, yeah, it might be cleaned out.
Clean or cleaned out, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know her at all. And then so if I wanted to have her come and clean, but I didn't trust her to be in my house, what's the option? What's my only other option? I would have to be there when she cleans.
Right, or clean yourself.
And that's, well, come on, we're dealing in reality here, Matt. So, but that's the other thing is I could be there when she cleans the house, but then that's weirder because who sits there and like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to help, so that's out of the question, especially if I'm paying somebody. Mm-hmm. But I'm just going to sit there and watch TV while you clean my house?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to be there if someone was cleaning my house because I would have to I would feel the need to help even though I'm paying them. I would feel like I would have to help.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
And then if I'm going to help, then why am I paying you?
And also, the other part of it too is if you came to my house and I was paying you to clean it, as soon as you went to my house, you would realize I'm not the kind of person that can afford to pay somebody to clean my house. Mm-hmm. So then it becomes all kinds of awkward. Matt, remind me next week to get some to go to the store and get some blue duct tape. Many people, I know, Bart just mentioned it in the chat room, but he is not the first person to bring this up. Other people have brought up to me that the missing blue that drives people crazy.
That for Mike is vintage.
Right. They're going to be redoing the studio eventually. So
I think it adds character.
It will be kind of all redone. But maybe we can just get some blue duct tape just to cover that up because
if only we had a spooky South Coast bumper sticker that was
Well, I didn't say that they're all gone. I just said we don't have anybody anymore to give away.
Right. Well, that's what we should do. Just put one right over that.
It won't really, like, it'll fold over. It'll look kind of weird. But, you know, it's easier than going out and buying some blue duct tape.
That's right.
But we'll see what we can do to fix that up. I don't know, and I don't know why it gets like that, because nobody sits over there. How did that get broken?
I don't know.
This is probably not great radio, but if you're watching on Spooky TV, you can see behind me, like, how does that come off? You know, it's not like people are rubbing up against it or catching their shirts on it. Nobody's ever used that counter in all the time we've been here. Like, we have all these counters that were put in. Nobody uses them for anything.
I feel like it's always been like that, though.
Right. We need to make sure that when they do the new design and they rebuild everything, when they do all that, we need to make sure that they don't have anything that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So, like, we don't need odd cabinets facing different ways than they should. We don't need any of that. This studio is like the Winchester Mystery House of of AM Talk Studios, because it's like that when they built it, they're like, just add another cabinet door there to confuse the ghosts.
Right.
So remind me, by the way, that just reminded me. Remind me to tell you a radio station ghost story later on that I can't tell it on the air.
Okay.
But remind me of that. So that's you know, going all the way back to what I started talking about. That's why the casting call was for a male. I'd like to at least hope that most of the audience understood that. And I'd like to think that a lot of those comments were just kind of poking at us a little bit, that they weren't serious, but some of them definitely were. Like, I thought we were gonna start having people, like, protest the show, saying that we don't support women in the paranormal. Like, go back and go through our archives, and you will see that we have always supported women in the paranormal, especially when we have one every week on the show. Not every week, because she's sick tonight, but so there you have it. If you want to apply, if you are a male between the required ages and you have the required technical know-how, just go to our social media. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook, and you will find that post there. And on that post, you can see all of the information for how you can apply. And then you will get the show. You will get to be on the program. And then when you make it onto the show, because you found out about it on Spooky South Coast, that means you have to come on to this show and give us the first interview before it airs.
Right.
Which is actually why we're going to have Greg and Dana on tonight, because they have a new web series coming up. They have a new program coming up on their Planet Weird website. And what's funny is we've had them on the show before, but never for an entire show. We've had them on for bits and pieces, 5-10 minutes here and there, and we've said, well, we'll have you guys back on for a full show, and we never did it. And Stephanie was pushing and pushing and pushing, like, don't forget to bring Greg and Dana on for a full show. And so then I tell her last week, we're having Greg and Dana on next week, full show. She was very excited, and then she goes and gets sick. So
it's probably the plants.
I did what I could do. I booked them.
Yeah.
I can't keep her constitution.
I blame
100%.
I blame the plants. She probably went to like a Home Depot and then walked through the plant section and then died.
She was actually asking if we would take the plants out before the show and then bring them back in so that they're not in the room when the show's going on. And I wanted to say to her, like, listen, Stephanie, we love you, but not enough to carry this 200-pound plant out.
They are really big. They're giant plants.
I feel like you don't have any. Yeah, you don't need this camera, right?
Nope.
So
I can put it over there.
Yeah, let's see if we can get people a shot of just how big that plant is in the background. Is that in a good position for you? And there it goes. And now the mayor can't be on YouTube this week because I went and broke the camera. People are saying they can see the little ones behind me. But, oh, you went to it right as I dropped it. That was good timing on my part. So look at that. Look at that giant plant. That thing weighs a ton. I know because I tried to move it so I could see out the window when I was in the news booth. But you want me to carry that plant out? Even the two of us together would struggle to carry that plant out.
Right. It is a big plant.
That's like if we fed that thing blood, it would try to take over the world. You're not going to actually try to pick it up, are you? Oh, okay.
No, I'm gonna.
Oh. Well, let's point out that's not a regular Coke can either.
16-ounce.
A 16-ounce Coke can. So that's like what, the equivalent of like maybe a can of Monster,
Yeah, probably about that.
or at least a Red Bull. A little fatter, but at least as tall as one. So that gives you an idea of how big that plant is.
If I thought of it, I should have put the plant in Stephanie's spot and then periodically during the interview just faded off to her.
I wonder if like even just seeing the plant would make her react. Bart's going to come and stand outside the window. Yes, we've told people in the past you really can't see it during the show, but we have an entire glass wall that we can see out into the parking lot. And so, yeah, anybody that comes to the show and stands outside, we will see you. We actually did a live radio drama, which we're going to do again.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking to some people. They want to do it.
It was really fun.
We just need a good script. And I have to, Chris and I were talking about writing one, and maybe somebody out there has written one that they want us to perform, what have you. But we did it where we had multiple microphones going around the studio, and you were over here and you were running all the sound effects and everything. We were going to do Foley, like we really wanted to have you perform the sound effects.
I was the digital Foley man.
Yeah, but we couldn't really get all the materials together, like to bring in the big metal sheet to do like the thunder and all that kind of stuff. And so and then I did the narration sitting over here, and then we had all the actors on the 3 crane mics going around, and we invited people to come sit outside. It was warm weather, so we said bring a blanket, sit outside. We figured that they wouldn't be able to hear us, so we went to Walmart and bought a radio so that they could sit out there and listen to the show as it's being performed. And it worked out pretty well. So maybe we could do something like that again. Maybe we could do it on stage somewhere and then just kick it back over the radio.
That's an idea.
It's absolutely something to look into, and we will. We always have these great lofty ideas that we don't follow up on, but that's one that people keep asking for. And if you've never heard that episode of Spooky South Coast, if you just go back into our archives, which are all free, if you go back into whether you go to, it won't be on YouTube because it was before we did YouTube, but if you go back to our iTunes podcast or anywhere else that you get podcasts, and you look for Old Time Radio, Spooky South Coast, you will find that episode. We broke it up. The first hour, we talked to an old time radio expert. The second hour, we performed the play itself. And then the third hour, we actually went back and kind of talked about how it all came together. So it's a 3-hour episode, and I think we also put the drama itself out just as a separate file too, if you only want to grab that. But it was pretty well. It was well written by the folks who wrote it, but it was also well acted by the folks that came in and performed it. And it was all of our friends who are in the paranormal field, but also actors. Leanne from the Lizzie Borden House and Keith Johnson had acted in plays together before in the past, and Lizzie Russell was here, and she had been an actor, and Moniz and Andy had parts, and it actually worked out pretty well. So you can go back there and check that out. We'll do another one. We'll do it in warm weather so people can come with blankets and lawn chairs and sit outside, and maybe we'll even get some snacks together. Since we are the paranormal show that deals with snacks. I was waiting for you to say that's because you're a snack yourself, Weisberg. But I guess you're not going to. All right. Well, why don't we get into the actual discussion for tonight's show, and why don't we bring our friends Greg and Dana Newkirk on. And again, if you are not familiar with their work, you are going to really love all the different things that they do and all the different things that we can talk about tonight. Of course, we want to talk to them about the new web series that's coming out, but we're going to touch upon a lot of different stuff. And if you want to call in at any point during the discussion, 508-996-0500, 877-996-1420 are the numbers. Just want to throw those out at the beginning because I know that people always have questions for Greg and Dana. They're going to call in and they're going to ask how different items from the museum are doing. They're going to call and ask about, some of the new things that might be coming up and all the places they're going to be. But I will tell you this. They're going to be here. They're going to be here in New England coming up very shortly. So we'll have all those details as well. So let's bring them onto the line right now. Good evening. Is this line Greg or is this line Dana?
Hey, this is Greg.
All right, Greg. We're going to lock you in.
All right, man.
And now let's bring on Dana on this line. And hold on, we'll bring that up too. And whoa, there we go. Dana, are you with us?
I am here.
All right, so we've got you both on the line, and we're going to make the magic happen, and hopefully keep the connection going. It's hard because we're broadcasting only on the internet tonight, so because the radio station's running a football game.
Oh, I gotcha.
So we get some weird audio things that happen, but we'll make sure that we can hear both of you.
We'll blame it on the goblins, man.
That's what I'm really excited about because I remember. It must have been, 7-8 years ago that I first heard you mention the idea of these goblins, Greg, that you first started going down this path.
Yeah, it was, I think, 7 years ago now. Crazy.
And so what happened? How did this come about that, you started researching this case?
Oh, God. Let's see. I got an email 2012. And it was from this guy by the name of, he said his name was David Christie. I'm comfortable saying his full name now because, nobody, you'll see. Anyway, David Christie claimed that these little creatures were coming out of a mine shaft on the edge of his property. And it just was a crazy story. It seemed way too good to be true and kind of blew it off at first. And then he sent photographs. And from that point on, it was just a race to the weirdest possible conclusion.
I mean, it's got to be some. Dana, you guys get a lot of weird emails and a lot of weird stuff that comes your way, but it's rare that something gets the both of you excited enough to actually get up and run out and chase this down. I mean, you would like to go out and chase these things down, but this was a different level of excitement from Greg. Were you a little bit concerned, Dana, with just how much he was wanting to go out there and check this out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about something, first of all, that's really strange. I mean, most people aren't really actively looking for goblins, and what is a goblin at the end of the day? But, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of elements that made me really nervous. So I definitely tried to be a little bit more I tried to kind of rein it in a little bit, whereas I knew Greg was ready to kind of run in head first.
Yeah, you eventually learn, to some degree, what the expected level of, how much you want to be into these things are. You kind of say, okay, like we'll go and check. Let's make a plan. We'll figure out when it is. But to have something like this that kind of just seemed to capture your attention, there's a little bit extra at work when that happens. Greg, I know too that I know that we've talked about this before in the past. You have to be really careful because the more that you guys have become known as people who investigate these weird claims, the more you're getting weirder and weirder people that want you to come out and see them. So that's
the truth.
There's safety concerns involved.
I mean, that was so going even further than that. I mean, one of the things that this guy, he claimed he wanted to blow up the mine shaft that these things were coming out of that was on the edge of his property. And that alone was cause for pause because, number one, dynamite is not very easy to find. And two, I don't know the legal repercussions of that. You're taking this guy's story at his word. Is it really his property? Is he just luring us out there to, I mean, is he luring us out there to hurt us? Is he luring us out there to make us look stupid? Or is he really being assaulted? There's like a back and forth, usually that's why a lot of paranormal investigators make people go through, psychological assessments before they bother to stay at their house.
It's one thing to go and investigate somebody's paranormal claims, even as crazy as they may sound. It's another thing to be an accessory to a crime.
Well, that's the truth. And, this was a much weirder thing than we'd normally gotten. I mean, because at the time, there's a lot of really weird elements to this case where this wasn't sent to us when we were doing, Who Forwarded, which is now Week in Weird. This was sent to my old ghost hunting team's email address. The website was still up, but it was a pretty defunct website. And there was no reason for this person to reach out to us. But he, addressed me. Somebody told him to contact me and said I would be able to help. And that's where it all started.
It almost seems like, though, when you tell me that it's something that is an older email address, I immediately worry about, how long has he known about you? And how long has he been looking into you if he still has that old information?
Well, that's another concerning thing, because whoever this person was being directed, we think, by somebody else who had a lot more information about us and knew where we had been and knew people we'd been talking to and knew places that we'd been investigating. At least we believe. Is really the more we got invested in the case, the more scary it began to be. And eventually there was a point where we just kind of left it alone for a few years.
I don't blame you there. Dana, was there some trepidation on your part when you found out that it was, somebody who was reaching out through the older channels? Because obviously, you guys get a lot of emails every day, you get phone calls every day, but to know that somebody's using something that is, pretty much defunct, you got to be a little bit worried. And that's what's great about you guys, is like you kind of balance each other out to some degree. So when Greg's getting all excited about this, were you kind of being the one to caution him about, hey, wait a minute, this is an older email address that he really shouldn't even have?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm the first to say I'm a full-on chicken. I am usually not really excited about, running headfirst into situations like this. So, yeah, I mean, specifically, there's something super creepy about someone who, it appears as if they know where you've been and they're aware of what you're doing, and they're kind of taunting you with that a little bit. That is a really, really scary feeling to have.
Yeah, I mean, and I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning of the show, but you're somebody who was kind of in the public eye with paranormal stuff going all the way back to 2000, when Girly Ghost Hunters was on. So I mean, you're probably used to people who are either knew you then and are just rediscovering you now, or people who might have been following along with you all that time. And it can get a little weird when they reach out to you that way and say, I've been watching you since you were on television in 2000.
Absolutely. I think you've got to have some kind of there's like self-preservation there, where you have to assess certain situations and even people to a degree. You have to think about whether or not this is a safe situation for you to go into. And I was really nervous about everything that had to do with this case.
So Greg, how long was it before you made the decision to actually go and well, I mean, first of all, it probably took you a little while to even decide to reply back to the email and to get back in touch with this gentleman. But what was kind of the timeline to really want to go out there and see this for yourself?
Well, don't underestimate my curiosity, because I emailed him back right away. I emailed him back right away. I pretty much email anybody who has something weird. I want to know more. I mean, that's how I decide how invested I want to be.
Sure.
So I emailed him back, and we exchanged a few emails over the course of a few weeks, and it finally got to this point where he had sent these photographs of these three-toed footprints The footprints, we showed them to everyone we could think of. We showed them to wildlife experts. We shared them on Facebook with our friends. A lot of people had different opinions, but no one could quite figure out what made them. The one really cool thing, the cool thing about trafficking in lots of different paranormal areas is we knew a ton of Bigfoot hunters. And Bigfoot hunters were like, hey, these things are interesting because they have dermal ridges, and those are very hard to hoax. So these are probably real. We just don't know what made them. They look a little bit like some Bigfoot tracks that we've seen because there's some three-toed Bigfoot prints that have been collected. And so all of these different things coming in, he sent us photographs of the creatures, which are, in typical paranormal fashion, they're very blurry, they're hard to make out, but almost look like these little, almost like gray alien type beings creeping around, looking around a tree. So after that, we just both said, okay, there's something to this. Let's get this guy's address and do some more deep creeping. So at this point, I said, okay, we're in. Let us know. How do we get in touch with you? What's your phone number? Let's set up a date. And then we never heard from him again. Even then, it would have been hard for us to get down to see him because we were in Canada at the time. I was going through Canadian immigration. So we were landlocked for a while, but there was always the option of finding somebody that we knew, the closer to Kentucky. And then we just never heard from him again. And so we just kind of dropped it. It was really interesting, but there was nothing else we could do. Years later, I even sent him a follow-up email. I'd sent him several over the years, but eventually one day, 2015, I believe it was, the email had bounced. So he had deactivated his email address. We couldn't find any reference to this guy. We called the local police. The police said, yeah, we get reports of stuff like this once in a while, but we can't really give you any details. So we thought something was going on. It seemed like it was the right area. We knew the town that it had allegedly happened in, but we couldn't go anywhere. And then it got really strange because this other guy started to email, who went by the screen name Terry R. Wrist. This guy was very concerning because he spoke in a weird, typed in a weird broken type of text and said he had something for us. And then he sent us GPS coordinates to a place that we had been just like a couple months before.
Well, he didn't give you an explanation as to what the coordinates were about?
He said, why did you stop when you were so close? I have something for you, 1 week. And then he said, Hellier, which is the name of the town that this happened in. He said, Hellier was a symptom. The door is closed, the window is open, use the numbers. And at first, we thought that the numbers were a credit card because they lined up perfectly with a credit card number, but it didn't belong to any bank. And that's when one of our friends on Facebook pointed out, oh, those are GPS coordinates. And they were to Brown Mountain, which is a place that we had just been doing we were looking for an underground alien cave base and doing some alien abduction experiments for a project that never materialized. And it was very scary that somebody knew where we were because we weren't really talking about it.
Right. I was going to say, it would seem very unlike you to broadcast the location of where you were if you were working on something that, was going to be coming down the pike later on.
For sure.
Yeah. Usually you keep that stuff under wraps and you might give a tease and say, we're working on something really cool. We'll have more information for you later. But for him to have known that you were already there is, that's extra freaky.
Well, and the other weird thing that was a little concerning was the fact that this guy, he was the person that originally told David to get in touch with us in the first place. He actually name drops him at some point. This guy, the only reference we could find to that fake name was in the back of a really weird, obscure old book from the 90s called Secret Cipher of the UFOnauts by Alan Greenfield. And he is an occultist who does a lot of investigation of UFO phenomena and believes that they're very linked. And there's an interview with this guy, Terry Rist, in the back. And it is pretty wild stuff. It's not stuff that I ever subscribed to. It was about a lot of like the old Richard Shaver mysteries, going down into caves and with, Vietnam veterans and, killing aliens. Stuff that was very over the top. And it was the only reference we could find to this guy was in these books. And those books ended up becoming a really big point of investigation the more we got invested in the case.
Oh, so it seems like this is it's not just the weirdness of this particular instance with these goblins, but this is a history of weirdness because you're dealing with people that are, they're just as much invested into this as you are. This isn't the average, like, hey, I have this weird thing going on in my house or in my yard. I need you guys to come check it out. This is somebody who knew what they were dealing with.
Oh, for sure. And, the more that we started to look into these cases, the more we realized, oh, wow, there's something strange happening. So we started to call them Kentucky goblins because they sounded quite a bit like the Hopkinsville case that happened way over on the western side of Kentucky in 1955. The idea of a farmhouse being besieged by these creatures that people thought were extraterrestrial. There were a lot of the same kind of themes happening. So we started to refer to them as the return of the Kentucky goblins. Well, we realized there's the biggest cave system in the world. It's the Mammoth Cave system. And all these people were talking about these things coming out of caves. And when you follow that cave system, it runs all the way up the Appalachians. And you start to look into stories of little creatures coming out of caves, harassing families. People have been giving them different names for hundreds of years, but they all share so many of the same characteristics that it's very likely people have all been experiencing the same thing, but because they've been separated regionally, they've just named them different. And, the one clue that we had to go on was we had talked to Geraldine Sutton, who is the daughter of one of the guys, Lucky, who was involved in the original Hopkinsville case. She helped them with the Kelly Green Man Festival. She's the last one in the family who's willing to talk about the story. There are still people who are alive that were there when the goblins attacked the farmhouse, but they won't talk about it because they've been mocked so much. I actually met her, and she took me to the site where this crash of this spaceship was supposed to have happened in 1955, and they showed me a cave entrance. And no one had ever talked about the cave. So it seems to me like there's something going on in the Mammoth Cave system, and whatever is going on in Hellier, whatever was happening in Hopkinsville, a lot of that stuff seems to be related. It's just trying to put those pieces together on a map.
So Dana, when does the decision come about to actually go out there? Because, like we said, Greg, he's ready to go as soon as he hears the story. But when does the decision come out to say, like, we need to go out there and see this for ourselves?
So eventually hilariously enough, we ended up moving to Cincinnati, which is right on the border of Kentucky. And we decided at that point we were going to just kind of go and do a little recon and just see what this place felt like, what it looked like, what we, what kind of vibes we got from it, which was it was our first kind of adventure there. And it was interesting, and it was enough, kind of poking around and talking to people and hearing some stories. It was enough to get us to, really want to kind of come back again with a larger group of people.
And so now, when you go there and you're physically there and we hear about all these places where high strangeness has happened, they have a feel to them. Did you feel, Dana, like when you got there, like this was the kind of place where, yes, something weird either did happen or is about to happen?
Absolutely. It's true. I mean, it sounds like such a trope, but it really is true. There's definitely a feeling. There's kind of a static to the air. It just feels very different. It feels like something has happened or something is happening. And I very much felt it. I mean, the group of us who've been investigating in that area have all felt it. And I mean, going right back to the first time that Greg and I stepped foot in Hellier, we definitely felt it.
So who Dana did you bring along with you? Who's involved in the ongoing investigation?
So originally, our friends Carl Pfeiffer and Connor Randall actually kind of became a part of this case by synchronicities, and really it was sort of Carl was sort of the driving force behind getting us to kind of recollect our thoughts and really go back to this place from kind of a documentary standpoint to document what we could experience, kind of dig into this case and really do the work really at that point. So that kind of became the core team, the four of us and Carl's assistant cameraman Rashad. We really there was just five of us, and we were really just kind of ready to dig in and do the work and document it as well as we could, and be able to share that entire kind of investigation with everyone.
And it's good, Greg, too, that you guys have a Rolodex of people that you can reach out to for the different strange things that you can encounter, to see if there's similar reports from other places or anything that might tie in. Were you reaching out to other people with some of the things that you found to see if it linked up to maybe some other weird reports you've heard of similar phenomena?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of the best tools in any paranormal investigator's arsenal are people who think differently than you, who investigate different things than you do. So we've always been of the mindset, at least for the last 5 or 6 years, that a lot of this phenomena is connected. So, we reached out to friends of ours who were UFO investigators, and we reached out to cryptozoologists, and we asked for their opinions on things that were going. And we talked to our good friend John Tenney. Tenney even makes a brief appearance in the documentary because he's the guy that we went to when we had exhausted all of our other weird ideas and we were frustrated about what was happening. We reached out to anybody we possibly could. One of the things that we did is all the information that we were comfortable sharing publicly, we put online. We wrote a really in-depth article that listed everything, even as crazy as it might sound, from secret cipher of the UFOnauts to the idea of, speaking to Alan Greenfield at one point in an email. He seemed to believe that we were being fed disinformation by somebody and that we should be careful because we probably don't want to go where this person was sending us. So everyone from occultists to ufologists, cryptozoologists, paranormal investigators, historians, folklorists, everyone. I mean, it was all incredibly valuable in the end.
And what's key about that is that you weren't making any snap judgments about what was going on. You weren't going into this with any preconceived notions. So to be willing and open to explore all those different avenues, that's what's missing for a lot of people when they research things, is they go into something thinking that they have answers, and they just try to find the evidence to answer, to reach those answers, back up the answers that they already have.
I mean, everybody's going to view something through their own lens, which is where having multiple lenses is really valuable. Especially, I'm sure you've noticed the same thing, Tim. There are people who they stick to one particular thing, so whether it's cryptozoology or ufology or whatever, and they don't really want to cross wires with people who investigate other things. And I don't think that's a great thing, because the more people start to realize we're all experiencing very similar things, we're just framing them differently based on our own interests, you start to realize there's so much crossover. And in that crossover are the real answers. So I think it's very important that everyone who investigates the paranormal has a really wide view, or at least has people to surround themselves with who can give them a different lens to peer through once in a while.
And Dana, I'm sure you can look too to some historical cases, like, just for example, look at the Mothman case, a very famous case that I think most people that are listening to this program are familiar with. But there's no one solid answer in something like that. It touches on all different parts of the supernatural and the unknown. So to go into a case like this that can have all of those different factors, there is at least some precedent to see exactly what Greg's talking about, to see this kind of cross-germination of different approaches.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, the one thing that, you know, Greg and I talk about a lot, and I know Carl and Connor do as well, is the idea that you have to be ready to go into these types of investigations, ready to just go where it takes you. You have to be willing to kind of be open to the experience. And so, I mean, for us, that's exactly it. You can't kind of put it into a box and say, well, it's ghosts, or it's definitely UFOs, or it's Bigfoot. You have to just be willing to kind of look at the phenomena and the experiences that people are having and what's happening in these areas, and be ready to kind of not be able to put it in a box. And at the end of the day, be okay with that, which is really hard for a lot of people, specifically when, you know, they're very focused on one aspect of the paranormal.
And was the decision made right from the beginning to document this? To obviously, you know, you're going to film things anyway, but did you come at this with an approach of, you know, let's see where this goes because this could make a very interesting documentary series or even a documentary film? Was that something that was talked about at the beginning, or did that just kind of happen naturally as your investigation went on?
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
The documentary was all Carl.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, around 2015, we had gone out to kind of just do an initial creep on the town of Hellier and see what's going on there and speak to people and see if it was worth going back. And we got a lot of really interesting stuff. There was a lot of really weird sightings, a lot like UFO in particular, a lot of weird UFO sightings. But, you know, when you start to talk to people about goblins, they kind of scratch their head a little bit because the name goblin and all that the weight that carries from pop culture, it's very tough to swallow for people. And so once we had made an initial investigation of the town and we'd run around and talk to people and kind of made our presence known and handed out some business cards, we got people that said, hey, you know, I've seen a three-toed footprint out in this place, and very sincere, very helpful. But our lives changed quite a bit around that point because we just started working at an internet startup, and we were working like 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we didn't have time to drive, 4.5, 5 hours out to this place and see what was going on. And, then we started to do, we did an episode of Finding Bigfoot, and then things just kind of spiraled from there. But it wasn't until 2017 that Carl really kind of lit a fire under everybody's ass and said, listen, I had this really weird synchronicity. I was listening to you talk about this on a podcast, and immediately the auto tweeter from Week in Weird tweeted the article about it on Twitter while he was watching from almost 2,000 different randomized tweets. And he said, this means something.
Right.
We should do this. Oh. And he put it all together, and a few months later, we were in Cincinnati gearing up to go hit the mountains.
Wow. And I'm going to ask Dana this question because, being the Canadian of the bunch, you have a different perspective on how weird some of us Americans can be. How did you find the people of Hellier when you went there? What did you think about them, kind of individually and collectively as a whole?
Surprising. I mean, for a place that is, it is kind of isolated, everyone was really helpful and really nice, and they were ready to kind of like tell us their stories. And they, we got a lot of kind of eye rolls, which is understandable. Again, like Greg said, when you drop the word goblin on someone, they don't necessarily know how to process that or what it even means because it isn't really a thing. In their eyes anyway. So, there was a lot of eye rolls and kind of like, who are these people? But for the most part, people were really excited to tell us their stories because they were experiencing weird things or they had experienced weird things and they didn't really have anyone to talk to about what they had experienced. So for the most part, everyone was really, welcoming, kind of like ready to tell us their stories.
But Greg, too, there's it's been helped by the fact that enough of this weird stuff is in the media now that people are a little bit more comfortable talking about it. You must have encountered some people where it was, somebody might have said, hey, go see Joe. Joe's got a story to tell you. And then when you go to see Joe is like, well, I don't want to talk about it. You must have had to do some poking and prodding to get some of these people to share.
Oh, loads. And I know, even now, we're less than a week away from the launch of the series. I know that a lot of the residents of Hellier are very concerned because they don't want to look foolish, which I totally understand, because they just have an idea in their head of how this is going to be portrayed. But everyone was very helpful, even if they didn't believe. Everyone was willing to tell us a story or a story that they had heard. There were people who were saying, like, hey, we've got a fleet of ATVs. We know where there's weird sounds coming out of a cave. My son was hunting, and he found this three-toed footprint. It was up by this cave. We never thought it would be, we just thought it was a weird quirk. Let's go. Let's check it out. Some people, I think the nature of places that are out of the way, sometimes people go there to be out of the way. They don't want people poking around their business. They don't want people asking them questions. They don't. There is a bit of a fear of outsiders, which I totally get. But overall, everyone was very helpful, even if it was just like, hey, don't go in that mine because it's real dangerous. So everyone was pretty great.
Well, I mean, that's an experience unto itself. Is, we go to all kinds of weird places and what we do, and we usually take precautions as much as we can to keep ourselves safe. But when you say, you're going into these mines, I mean, that's something that has all kinds of inherent dangers that, are like nothing you've ever experienced before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the one thing everyone has to realize about this is Dana and I, we're not cryptozoologists. Carl and Connor, we're not cryptozoologists. We weren't going into this with a cryptozoologist idea in mind. We're not really even ufologists. We're interested in the subject, and I know more about it now these days because of Hellier than I ever did before. But we come from a pretty solid, very ghosty background. We were all part of ghost hunting teams. Carl and Connor were the resident investigators at the Stanley Hotel for many years. That's our background. So we didn't really know what we were doing, going into caves and going into mines. We're nerds that would sit in rooms with, EMF meters and, get comfortable and try not to fall asleep sometimes. So the idea of going into mines and caves, and the idea of trudging around, the Appalachian Mountains in places that we didn't have cell phone signal and people were a little distrusting sometimes. That was pretty scary.
Well, and Dana too, with your other experiences, your other investigations, you're usually dealing with, what it is you're trying to communicate with, what you're trying to find is dead. So you don't really have to worry about what can happen to you. But now you're dealing with something that could be very much alive and very physical and able to hurt you in some way.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, you can't help but think about also just what kind of animals are out there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There's a lot of factors, I think, that go into doing this kind of stuff that are a lot different than, like Greg said, when you're, investigating a place where, you're talking to people that have died and you're trying to communicate with people that have died. How do you communicate with a goblin if you meet one? How do you, how do you have that kind of community? Like, what is that even going to be like? So those factors are all kind of playing in the entire time, which definitely it puts you on edge, because you don't really know how to process everything, which was definitely something that I think we were all experiencing at certain points.
And Greg, forgive me if I'm stereotyping, but you're dealing with an area where, especially, if you're talking about remote, out-of-the-way places in Kentucky, I've watched the documentaries. I've seen what goes on in Appalachia. I see, what kind of illegal businesses are going on. And you've got to worry about, you're out there wandering around there, and you never know who's going to come at you and wondering why you're on their property.
Well, I mean, that's a big thing, too, is we were very careful that everywhere we went, we had permission to go. We didn't trespass on anybody's land or anything like that. We had ideas of where this stuff might have happened. We've changed our minds on that a few times. And so, it does get kind of scary when you're going up these roads where you really need a four-wheel drive vehicle to go, and there's lots of houses up there. like I said before, a lot of the people that decide to live out in these places, they're living there because they want to be away from people. So it's very hard to just roll up to somebody's house in the middle of nowhere and then get up the courage to knock on the door and ask if they've seen anything strange, because to them, sometimes you're the strangest thing they've seen, and they don't get people out there doing stuff like that.
Well, but it's one thing, though, to deal with those people, to deal with people who have been around people and decided to move there to get away from them. But you're also dealing with people who have never been around people, people who have only known that environment growing up. So they must have felt like you were even more of an outsider.
Oh, for sure. But even then, we met a lot of people like that. And sometimes those people are the best people to talk to, because those people, they have lived there their entire life. They know what's weird. They know who's weird. They know the stories. Those are the people that ideally you want to talk to if you can get them comfortable enough to speak to you. I think I had a bit of a leg up on some of the other guys because I grew up in a very rural area. I grew up in a very rural area of northern Pennsylvania. People called it Pennsyltucky. So I was used, my dad was a Baptist minister. He talked to everybody. He had to be good at it. So fortunately, I think a little of that rubbed off on me. And I wasn't quite as nervous, I think, as some of the city slickers on the team.
Well, Dana, there's a question here in the chat room from Eileen. She wants to know if the people who had encountered these goblins said if there was any way that they had been able to communicate with them.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Like, can you answer that better than me, Greg, since I'm literally just going,
There really wasn't any communication.
Yeah.
At least from David, the closest he got was
there were sounds.
They made a sound that he described like a skunk, and that they kind of chattered to each other. And he never had the opportunity to speak to them because he caught them one night. They were going through his shed and they were taking like his wreath and shoving it in his mailbox and like doing weird stuff, tapping on his kids' windows at night. His kids would talk about the bald kids who were bald like grandpa, who were tapping on the windows. And so it was a very scary situation. It wasn't anything that seemed like there was going to be much dialogue there.
Yeah.
And then after David disappeared, there was nothing. We couldn't get any further, at least at that time.
As you're telling me these stories, all I'm thinking about, and they don't have the same physical characteristics, it doesn't sound like, but all I'm thinking about is puckwudgies. Everything in this area kind of comes back to that.
But that's one of those things where you start to notice that sometimes, like even with the Kentucky goblins, the description that David gave of these entities, these creatures, whatever they were, they didn't have the really big ears that you'd normally see with the Hopkinsville goblins. With the Hopkinsville goblins, no one ever really saw the feet. So sometimes the feet are depicted like suction cups, saying that they floated. And David said these things hopped. But there's enough there in the way these things acted to feel like there's something, it's that idea of having a different lens. Mm-hmm. Depending on the different region, sometimes maybe the person who had the initial response, the initial interaction, they viewed it a certain way. Because I think there is a very
when you look at the
Hopkinsville
case, there's even interesting kind of details like, you mentioned, Greg, them having kind of these large ears, and at one point they shot at them back in 1955, and they described the bullets kind of pinging off them as if they were sort of made out of like, they had some sort of tin kind of exterior or something that was protecting them. So again, then your mind kind of goes like, well, maybe they were wearing helmets, or maybe there was something that made them look different. But again, like we mentioned earlier, when you talk to people, and specifically along that chain, and there are so many similar stories, but they're just called different things, or there are little slight kind of differences. You can't help but find that correlation.
One of the things that when it comes to the Hopkinsville goblins, I always kind of made that correlation here in Massachusetts with the Dover Demon, which, didn't have ears that we know of, or had little small ears based on the drawings, but the same kind of idea, the same kind of physical characteristics. So just because there's a concentration of them in Kentucky doesn't mean that they can't be the same things that are popping up individually in other places.
Well, when you look at the images that this guy sent and some of the drawings that we tried to mock up based on these images, it really does look exactly like the Dover Demon. I mean, it's super obvious that it looks very close to it. But you look at things like gray aliens, and if they were down on all fours, they would look like the Dover Demon too.
Yep.
So I think there's way more crossover to these things than people realize, and it's just people have given them different names, but they're all the same thing.
So now the series will drop on Friday on planetweird.com? Oh, weirdhq.com?
It'll be on Friday at midnight, so you'll be able to see it at 12:01 a.m. It'll be streaming on Amazon Prime, so if people have Amazon, they can watch it there. They can go to YouTube, Vimeo. It'll be on Hellier.tv, and you'll be able to find the episode descriptions and some bonus features and things like that over there too. So, there's plenty of ways to watch it. We wanted it to be as open and accessible. It'll be free. You don't have to buy it. We're really excited about it.
And I have to say, I've seen a lot of people who have, kind of launched their own little series on their websites, limited series. I mean, not to say little, but, their own short series on their websites. But I've never seen one get as much attention as this one has. To see, I think it was Bloody Disgusting has covered this, Sci-Fi Channel has discovered. This has been everywhere.
I think that's, we have a really great bunch of cooks in the kitchen, I think. I think, the one thing that you don't see a whole lot of, in fact, excuse me, I think this is the first time that anyone's ever used a super wide anamorphic lens for a paranormal series. Carl went out of his way to make sure that we had a lens that gave the same kind of effect that you would see in the old 80s movies like E.T. So he's using cinematography lenses, like actual cinema lenses, shot in super wide screens. So it has a very, very cinematic feel, has a very distinct look. And I think that people see the trailer and they don't assume that it was made as inexpensively as it was. So I think between that and the fact that there's a really interesting story and it's something that you don't see a lot of, I think that it's just a really perfect magic combination.
I mean, as you're saying, it looks beautiful, and people can check out the trailer. And when you look at it, not only does it have that great visual representation, but it's so much tension. Is that something, Dana, that we can expect through watching all the episodes, to have that kind of that tension carry throughout?
Absolutely. I always, it's funny. I think that everyone is going to kind of be transported there with us, and you're definitely going to be coming along on that adventure, but definitely expect to kind of be a little bit wound up at the end of every episode. It's definitely going to give you as much anxiety as we felt the entire time.
And I love it. I love it because you can control it. You can kind of it's your vision and Carl's, it's everybody coming together to decide how you want to present it. Instead of going out there and getting all this footage and then having to send it to, some network's editor, and then they start putting over some cheesy voiceover that you didn't really think fit into the moment. You're able to present it as close to what it is that you experienced as you can. And so the audience gets a chance to actually be there with you kind of as it's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was something that was really important to all of us. I mean, I know it was something that was really important to all of us, was to, try to document investigation. So it's not staged, it's not produced. It's what really happens on an investigation. And Carl has such a great eye and such an amazing way of kind of bringing people into the experience. But really, at the end of the day, it was just documenting an investigation, and I really think that integrity kind of will hold. I know people will definitely feel that throughout the entire series.
So, and how many parts? It's 5 parts to the series?
Yeah,
Yes, five.
there's 5
Yep.
episodes, and they're around an hour each. And it'll blow by. It'll be over before you know it, and you're going to want to know what's next. It's surprising.
Well, I mean, I'm already making a plan to binge watch, so I know I'm going to have to take a nap before that so that I can stay up all night and watch it. And then
That was an important kind of detail. Being able to binge watch something is, it's nice to kind of stretch it out, but there's nothing better than kind of losing an entire Saturday just binge watching something. So everyone is definitely going to want to just sit and kind of enjoy the whole thing all at once, I'm assuming.
And if it's anything like the trailer looks, you might as well just binge watch it and stay up till 5 a.m. anyway, because you're not going to go to sleep. You're not going to watch 2 episodes of this and then go to bed.
You'll lay in bed thinking about it. You'll have too many questions, I promise. At the end of each episode, you're just going to sit there and go, oh, God, what does that mean? And what I like about it, too, is, it's a good template almost for other people to say, okay, I get these emails. I don't think anybody gets the same emails that you guys get. I've heard about some of the emails that you've gotten over the years, and I don't think anybody gets. Maybe Tenny might get them like you guys, but Tenny might, yeah.
But maybe people will start taking this and saying, okay, instead of just going out there for my own edification, let me at least film this and see where it goes, because there's probably tons of cases like this that people could find that would take them down these weird and unexpected paths, but they just don't think to follow those paths. They look at it from a straightforward perspective. They try to fit it into the scope of and the lens of what it is that they do, and then they let it go. So maybe this will start helping other people who follow weird cases to start putting together and see the forest for the trees.
I think that's a huge part of our biggest hopes for Hellier, is that other investigators, for sure, will maybe, because even now there's people who they hear, oh, it's about goblins, and they scoff, but it's more than about that. And I think that's part of what we're trying to show people, is that if you blow something off simply because of what someone's telling you, that's their experience. It might be a different experience for you, but if they follow through and they don't ignore the weirdest emails, sometimes you're going to find things that you would never find any other way. I hope it helps people kind of embrace the overall weirdness, and I hope it'll help ghost hunters look at UFOs, and I hope it'll help cryptozoologists look at paranormal phenomena and understand that there's something bigger and stranger and weirder going out there, and quite often it's giving you a push. It's trying to push you in a direction. You just have to not fight the current.
And the phrase that stood out to me when I saw the press release come across my screen, the phrase that stood out to me was cerebral documentary. And knowing you guys, I know that you're never going to present something as just what it is on the surface. You're never just going to present it as, here's what it is, here's what we went and looked into, and here's what we found. You're going to really dig into the how and the why and what it can be. And Dana, that's got to be the most satisfying part of this, is to be able to, not only be able to go out and have your own experiences with this, but to put that in perspective into the larger part of this legend and other legends that can be associated, and to realize that, you are in the rare moment of being able to be part of something that is, just modern day mythology.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the major reasons why we wanted to do this ourselves, and why we, Carl, was going to be kind of the driving force behind documenting this and crafting this, was the idea that, we wouldn't have other people's input who weren't as invested in the phenomena as we are. And that was really important, to have every single person be so invested. And I mean, that's what we got. And I mean, it really, at the end of the day, is why it is going to be such a trip for people to experience Hellier.
So everybody can check that out. It's going to drop at 12:01 this coming Friday. I know exactly where I'll be. I'll be on my couch with all the lights on. Well, maybe I'll turn them off when I start watching, but they'll definitely be on by the end. And but for those of you in this area, those of you listening who are on the south coast of Massachusetts, here in New England, it's one of the questions that I hear more often than not is, when are Greg and Dana going to come back to New England? And you guys are actually coming back to New England very soon. You guys will be in Rhode Island in April.
Yeah, we're going to be at the X-Files Festival. It's a fan-run festival that celebrates all things X-Files, and we're going to be there with the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult. We're super, super excited because obviously we're massive X-Files fans, so to be invited to an X-Files celebration is huge for us. So yeah, we're super, super excited. We try and get out to New England as much as possible. We love it there, so... Yeah, April.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So it's going to be happening at the Crown Plaza, Providence in Warwick, April 26th through the 28th. You can get your tickets. Eventbrite has all the tickets up there, but we're going to be talking more about it in the coming weeks. We're going to have the organizers come on the show, and I know Matt Moniz is going to be there, and I'm going to be coming by as well, and Tom Reed will be there. Gary McKinstry, folks that people have heard on this show over the years are going to be there, as well as a number of other folks. So it's absolutely worth going and checking out. And have you been through Rhode Island before? Because Rhode Island is a weirdness unto itself.
We have had the distinct pleasure of being through Rhode Island.
I listen. There's a rivalry between Massachusetts and Rhode Island, but it's not really a rivalry because we win. Rhode Island is just so strange.
I wouldn't say any contest.
Yeah, I don't want to be one of those massholes, but I will be when it comes to putting down Rhode Island. No, I'm just kidding. I remember going all the way back to, I think it was 2007, the first year of doing this show, or maybe it was 2008, but we had just started doing this show. We were only a short time into it, and they had a convention in Rhode Island called Paranormal X The Gathering. And it brought together, the folks from Ghost Hunters and a lot of other area investigators. We actually did a live remote from there, and we got to interview Chris Williams in her first ever radio appearance. And so it was really cool, but nothing ever really went back to Rhode Island again in all those years since. So I'm so glad that somebody has decided to put something together, and that they've invited you guys to come out and bring the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult with you, because we've talked about some of these items on the show before, but folks, until you are there and you are seeing them for yourself, you don't understand. You really need to see or at least join the museum and become a member and watch some of the webcams and see what goes on. And then you'll have an idea of exactly why it's so exciting to have these items coming here to this area. I mean, we love you guys, of course, but we're really excited to see the
Hey, listen, we realize
objects.
We're just glorified handlers at this point.
You really are. You're basically just the street team for Billy now.
We're roadies.
Yeah, it's the truth. They're literally, we were on our way to an event on Mackinac Island a year ago, and you have to take the ferry over. There's no cars, there's no bridges. And I typically keep Billy very close, and he was in my backpack, and his head was sticking out. And at least 2 or 3 people said, "Oh, hi, Billy," and completely ignored me.
Well, if Billy's going to be there, I know one person that will be too. Right now, Stephanie's whole body is tingling. She doesn't understand why. She's homesick tonight, but she'll know exactly when we're starting to talk about Billy, because those two they're in love with each other.
He has that effect.
And does he have that effect with other people that are the same way? I imagine there must be others that when they're in his presence, they have that same type of a reaction.
I'll send you a photo of his altar, and you can tell me.
Well, we'll make sure we bring
overflowing.
We will definitely be bringing him some sort of an offering. Maybe Billy can get one of the last remaining spooky South Coast bumper stickers. Matt, what do you think? Should we give him one of those? But so, I mean, I know that you guys have been, chronicling everything on the Paramuseum website, and people can sign up for that. They can join up. They can join up with your Patreon. Let everybody know how they can get involved with all that stuff, Dana.
Yeah, so if all you really have to do is, we're pretty much everywhere. You can find us on Facebook. We're the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult. We have an Instagram. And then what is the address for the museum's Patreon?
It's patreon.com/paramuseum.
Paramuseum.
So it couldn't be any easier. And I have, people all the time that are like calling me up and they're saying, I have this item and I think there's something going on. I just say, just contact Greg and Dana. I used to tell them to...
you actually facilitated one of the items in the museum's collection, you and Stephanie.
We had it here at the studio for a brief, just for a couple of days. And from the stories that I heard, I'm glad that they are now in your possession instead of being here. Are you still using those? Those were the tarot cards, Dana. Are you still using those on a regular basis?
Yeah, they're very interesting. I mean, I probably, because of the nature of the cards themselves, use them a lot more than, I interact with them almost as much as maybe Billy on a regular basis. And I honestly really think that the woman who owned them before is kind of still working with them. Because I obviously own a billion tarot decks. I'm a bit of a hoarder. But that deck specifically is strangely accurate constantly. So I have a sneaking suspicion that whoever owned the deck before is still kind of using them to a degree. And I kind of just, I work with them during paranormal investigations, actually, is when I find that they're the most accurate. They can really tell the story of a location and what's actually going on in the location. So I've kind of, I've been using them a lot for that. But we've gotten a lot of people sort of picking up vibes from them just when they're on display in the museum, too. They tend to be a piece that people really kind of gravitate towards.
Well, I love that. I love the fact that they're carrying that energy through because, a lot of times people call you up and say, I have this item, there's something going on with it. You take the item away from the person and you realize it wasn't actually the item that was the cause of all this extra energy. So to know that whatever is there and whoever is there kind of stayed attached to those cards, it sounds weird, but it's heartwarming.
Yeah. I think that, I can imagine that if there were tools that someone used in life, professionally and with people, she or he were probably really connected to them. So they probably were, something that was very important. So to have someone kind of respecting that kind of connection and allowing that connection to still be, I can imagine, if it were me, I'd be really happy with that.
Well, we're getting a question in the chat room about where the tarot cards came from. They actually were, we were contacted by a friend of ours, a listener, and somebody who comes to some of our investigations who said, I have these tarot cards and I can't keep them because there's some sort of energy attached to them and all kinds of weird stuff is happening and I just kind of want to get rid of them, but I don't want to throw them away. And so I said, well, I would take them off your hands because it just so happened that it was only a couple of days before we were going to be meeting up to go on the Strange Escapes cruise. So I said I'll be able to give them to Greg and Dana and they can decide if they want to hang on to them. They can figure out what to do with them and no, actually no, it was Provincetown
That's
we were just about to go to because I remember that's when we gave them to you and kind of almost right away you picked up on there being something around them.
Yeah. Yep. I think because with a lot of the newer objects, sometimes because of the nature of how many events that we do, we see a lot of the same people at events. And I want to say that Chip actually sat with them at one point and kind of gave us a little bit of insight because every once in a while when we get a new thing, he likes to sort of sit with it and give us a little bit of vibe from it. And I think that he had mentioned also that he felt as if the person who had used them at one point was still there was some sort of connection that was still there.
Yeah, and I remember on the cruise you were reading, giving somebody a reading with them, and that person came back and said, listen, I've had a bunch of those readings, but this was kind of off the charts.
Yeah, they're really accurate. They really are. I've never used them and not felt pretty confident with what they were kind of telling me. So they're a really interesting piece.
So you can see those, you can see Billy, you can see all kinds of items when the Traveling Museum comes to Rhode Island, coming up in just a few months. And I've been kind of following along with some of the other things that you've been doing, but have you brought in some new additions since the last time you were here in New England?
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
We because of the nature of what we do, I mean, people bring us things at events all the time, and people send stuff to our P.O. box all the time. So there's tons and tons of new stuff. Specifically, I mean, we've kind of had a nice little break here between kind of December and into January. And even in that time, we've received a handful of objects. They just sort of, people contact us and they appear in our P.O. box, or we go and pick them up. So there's always new stuff.
We just got one in December 3rd, it arrived. And it's probably the most screwed up piece anyone's ever sent us. It apparently has a whole history that we were unaware of. Somebody called into this podcast called Night Call, and it's just people who call in and they, the hosts talk about stuff. They call into the voicemail, and somebody called in because a couple girls out of the Buffalo, New York area commissioned him to build a spirit board. He has a little private wood shop, and he said, well, okay, I've never made one before, but, what do you want it to look like? What kind of wood do you want? And they said, well, we already have the wood we want you to use. They brought him blood-stained wood that they had pried up from a murder scene in 2015 from a house that was condemned after people were murdered and set on fire, and actually commissioned this spirit board. And so he called in to see if it was ethical to make it. He went ahead and made it because they paid him the deposit. They got freaked out and didn't come pick it up. So he wrestled with whether it was okay to sell it and not tell someone where it was from, or to sell it potentially to someone who'd use it for the wrong reasons, knowing where it was from. And someone told him to send it to us, and it is really spooky.
And will you be bringing that with you, or?
I'm sure we'll bring it. We've been trying to bring some stuff that we call the volatile artifact display. So there's some things that are, we normally are okay with people handling stuff because we want them to have an experience, but there's a few things that are off limits, and we haven't decided what one this one's going to be yet because, to be perfectly honest, we've, since December, kept it in its box because it's just not very nice. We haven't done really many experiments with it, so...
Well, I mean, you have between now and the end of April, so we'll see what happens.
That's true. Well, if you don't see us at the festival, you know what happened.
Yeah, the board got them. Has there been? I mean, I understand that when you bring them out to people and people are going to handle them and people are going to hopefully be respectful of what's going on, but has there been anything that's been kind of overwhelmingly bad for the person that has handled the items? I know of a few people that have had like dreams and stuff, but I don't think I've heard personally any stories of anybody that paid any kind of heavy price for having handled any of the objects.
We're really careful about the ones that we travel with. I mean, we receive objects more frequency kind of now. Or more frequently recently, but ones that we would never bring into the general public just because of the nature of the stories kind of attached to them and maybe the trauma associated with them. But we're usually pretty careful about which ones we travel with just because we would never want to kind of bring anything into the general public that could potentially be dangerous. So, I mean, aside from some dreams and especially, if and this is the nature of what happens, but for people who are sensitive or psychic or have any kind of abilities, it can be very overwhelming for them a lot of the time when they kind of walk up or walk into the tent and experience it sometimes for the first time. That's a lot of stuff kind of coming at you all at once. So there's definitely a lot of kind of anxiety. That happens quite often. But anything that would be super dangerous, we just would never risk bringing to the general public. We obviously will take it from people, but we wouldn't ever kind of bring it to an event or anything like that.
Well, and the other thing too is you have to drive with these objects, so you don't want to run the risk of having it. And I know that it has, objects have kind of caused you some car issues in the past, so you want to try to avoid that as much as you can.
I think after a while you work out a rapport, and so you kind of get an idea. Oh, this one's going to be an issue, and you take extra precautions with it. In fact, there's an artifact that we actually took back to where it had been stolen from this fall. There was an object that we called the crone, and it was a hand-carved wooden statue with nails in its eyes and a noose around its neck. And that's, I think, the only one that's ever really caused anybody any actual harm. We had to keep it locked up because there was a lot of nasty stuff going on in our place after it arrived. There were people who claimed that they had been in car accidents. People's eyes would burn around it. There was a guy at Michigan Paracon who had a seizure after it was taken out of the box, in addition to a lot of other weird stuff. And so at that point we said, well, this thing's just not safe for anybody. So we actually trekked up into the Catskill Mountains, like 6 miles off of an unmarked trail to go and bury it and leave it, we just kind of put it to rest. And I think that was it.
So you brought it back. Was it to the exact same? Because wasn't it found in a cave?
It was found in a cave. We couldn't find the exact cave. We knew what park it had been taken out of. So we knew the general vicinity. So what we ended up doing is we hiked as far into the mountain to the park as we could. We found an area that felt right and looked right. I mean, the weirdest thing about this was we didn't know exactly where we were going, and we actually learned a lot of stuff while we were in this part of New York because we'd never been there before. So we learned a lot about the area. We learned a lot about the beliefs in the area, some of the cultural beliefs, and everything started to make sense. But as we walked up this unmarked path, we started to notice there were nooses hanging in the trees.
Oh, wow.
Just like around her neck. And it was almost like pointing us in a direction. And we eventually found a spot, and it felt right. It looked right. It was in the park that she had been taken from. And so Dana cast a big circle. We set up our tents, and we did a ritual all night long and let it out.
Dana, was there any concern on your part about having anything kind of come back at you guys for bringing it back there?
Yeah, I mean, so the idea really was that we wanted to return her to where she had been taken from because, with the story, there were 2 hikers who had taken her, and a lot of the activity the conclusion that we came to was a lot of the activity we're experiencing with her was just not going to stop, so we knew we had to bring her back. So, I was concerned, and it's one of the reasons why we created ritual space and we created kind of sacred space so that we were protected. But it was interesting. I mean, it didn't stop the activity from happening. I mean, we went in at the end of October, so we were camping and it was very cold. And we had kind of set up tents and created, like a general area where we were going to be doing this ritual. And it was the middle of the night. We decided we were going to try to sleep for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours if we could. And it was so cold. We were all 3 of us, Greg, myself, and our friend Tyler Strand. We were trying to sleep and we couldn't because it was so cold. We're all just sort of laying in this tent, and I'm noticing. I noticed it, and then I realized afterwards everyone was noticing it because we talked about it. But we were all hearing something kind of stalking around the outside of our circle area. And it was as if something was kind of trying to, like, test the barrier to see if it could, like, pass through into the space. And it would kind of, like, walk around the side of our tent. And at first I thought maybe it was an animal, but we had not seen animals at all. And it wasn't an animal. It definitely sounded like heavy boots or like feet kind of moving around our circle space. So, yeah, it was a very intense night. And obviously we did not get a lot of sleep, but we kind of did what we set out to do, and left feeling really confident about kind of returning her back to where she really just wanted to be.
Yeah, because that's the thing about these, items is a lot of them probably love being part of the museum and love being, the center of attention when you put them on display or when people are watching and learning about them on the website. So I'm sure a lot of them, especially Billy, for example, they like that attention, but she never really seemed to be an object that really kind of loved that spotlight so much.
No, not at all. I mean, really, one of the things that we experience a lot because, of the nature of what we do, when we receive an object that kind of has a lot of kind of negative associations attached to it, we always try to go into it without we go into it sort of by taking a giant step back and looking at it from a little bit different of a perspective. But we're never kind of ready to attach the word evil or demonic or anything like that to an object, specifically as one that we receive, right away. Just because that really changes our investigation at that point. So we always try to take a big step back and look at it from a wider perspective. And so, she was one object that just, at the end of the day, did not want to be with us, and we had to respect that. And that was, the main reason why we decided at that point that, the ethical thing to do, because again, if we're talking about objects that have intelligence attached to them, the ethical thing at that point is not to force something to stay where it doesn't want to be, but to return it back to where it wants to be and where it should be. And so that was kind of that mission, was really returning this object to a place where, no one will be able to find it, and whatever is attached to it can kind of be left alone and left to do what it wants to do.
What's weird is today I went to the flea market in my town, and I hadn't been there in years. And just today, it was a nice day, so I took advantage of it. It was cold, but it was sunny, so I was like, oh, I got to clean out my car. I got to go get my car washed and vacuum it out, so I'm going to do that. And I said, I'm going to go into the flea market. I haven't been there in a long time. And I start walking through, and I bought some old vintage radios because I love old vintage radios. And I was just about all the way through the flea market when it popped into my head, oh, right, we're having Greg and Dana on the show tonight. I hope I wasn't like subconsciously drawn here to go buy some haunted radios or something. So you might be getting a radio to your collection if anything goes wrong tonight when I get home.
You know our number.
If any of them act up, you know where to find us.
Well, I do have a few items myself because people used to give me stuff, and
Sure.
so. But I've always, I keep them in my shed. I don't let them into the actual house. But I have somebody gave me a piece of an old 17th century gravestone.
Oh, wow.
That somebody had taken from a graveyard, gave it to a friend. That friend had all kinds of stuff go on in their house, so they gave it to a friend of mine, and then that person said, yeah, I can't have this in my house anymore. Will you come and take it? So I held on to it because I'm thinking to myself, I have to figure out where it came from. I contacted a number of, it came from Cape Cod. So I contacted a number of cemetery commissioners on Cape Cod, and they all said, the piece that you're showing us, we have no idea of knowing because wherever it came from, many other pieces have fallen off by now. So I just keep that in my shed because I don't need any of that stuff in my house. And then when we went to, a couple of years ago, myself and Stephanie and John Brightman, we went to the S.K. Pierce mansion to bring Porter from the TWC there. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about how they were going to be knocking down the brick wall in the basement that would connect the house via the tunnel to where the furniture factory used to be across the street. And so we asked if we could knock some of the bricks down and if we could I asked if I could take some as souvenirs. So I took the bricks and I put them in a box that was in the trunk of my car. And we were going to another location that night for an event. And so there was one person who was really upset that he couldn't go with us to the S.K. Pierce mansion. So I gave him one of the bricks and I kept the other one in my car. And he brought that brick home, put it in his room, and would wake up and get scratched. He'd find scratches on himself. All kinds of weird stuff was going on in his room. So ever since he started telling me that, I've never taken that brick out of my car. So today as I'm cleaning out the car, I'm like, no, you're not coming in the house. You're staying there. Even if I have to take everything else out of the car, that brick stays.
I mean, we've got some stuff that we won't bring in the house. There's not much of it, but there's a few things that we just won't let them pass the threshold. They sit outside. Sometimes they're in the trunk. Sometimes it's kind of in the stairwell. Sorry, downstairs neighbor. But there's a few things we won't bring in.
I mean, is it anything in, like, is there anything to the object itself, or is it just the feeling that you're getting from it?
I mean, there's some stuff that's got some super, super bad vibes put into it. Sometimes it's just the people who gave them to us. Sometimes it's whatever it was. I mean, for instance, there's an object called, the guy who made it called it Hatred. and it's a really nasty little bit of work. And he claimed that an entity in the forest told him to construct it because it would be easier for them to communicate. He wouldn't have to go to the forest all the time. He could just use the object. And it's built, it's a very twisted face with horns wrapped in burlap. And the thing that you can't tell right away is there's sharpened pieces of metal underneath the burlap, so that if you hold it, you just pick it up and you're not thinking, you'll bleed on it.
Oh.
And there's nothing good about that thing.
No,
in fact, I thought I was probably going to get murdered when we picked it up. It was probably the scariest artifact pickup we've ever had. I threw up after it. I was so nervous.
Yikes.
I was looking for an escape route the whole time. It was one of the few times where I felt that feeling where it's like, oh, shoot, something's going to kill me. This guy is going to murder me. This is bad.
Yeah, I distinctly remember, I mean, we talk about it a lot because I think it probably, like you said, Greg, it is definitely one of the worst object pickups we've ever had. But it was like one of those experiences where your kind of reptile brain fight or flight kicks in and you are like looking for like possible escape routes and like, you know, you're trying to communicate or pay attention to the person who's talking to you, but at the same time you're very aware of the fact that you should be aware of, you know, if you need to run away or if you need to get out of here, what's the best kind of direction you need to be going in. That was definitely one of the most intense ones we've ever had.
So for anybody out there listening that has ever like sold something to somebody on Craigslist and had to meet up with them somewhere weird to do the sale, it's like that times a million.
Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Well,
Pretty much.
I remember there was I think I've told the story on the show before. I'm not sure if I have, but there was a production company actually from up in Toronto that had reached out to Chris Balzano and I when our Haunted Objects book had come out, and they wanted to film a pilot about haunted objects. So they asked Chris and I to kind of film a little sizzle reel for it. And so they flew Chris up from Florida, and they met us here in Massachusetts. We went to that same flea market that I went to today. But I tried to reach out to somebody that I knew had a haunted chair, or supposedly haunted chair. And it turned into a whole thing where he was supposed to meet us, and then he said the night before, he's like, I can't do it, I have car trouble. And I said, oh man, you know, these producers are coming all the way from Canada, like they're really counting on you to be there. It was like, well, maybe I can work something out. And it just turned into this whole thing where he kept trying to duck us for the entire Saturday that we were filming. And then finally I convinced him that he had to show up and let us in and show us the chair. So he did. But I'd never seen a person under the spell of an inanimate object as much as this guy was with this chair in the same room. Like he would stay far away from it. He kept it in a storage in a building that his parents owned, their former shop. But he used to live in the apartment over it, and it was in the apartment. But when he moved out of that apartment, he put it in this area and hadn't been back to see it since. And it had a power over him. And he would stay at the other side of this room, but every time that Chris and I went over near the chair, he would like start getting all protective of it, like start moving toward us like he was going to stop us. And I said to him
a lot, yeah.
I said, it's so obvious that you don't want this in your life anymore. Just let us take it. And he looked at me and his eyes got even wider and he said, oh no, I can't ever let anybody else have this. And it just stuck with me to see that and to see like that's the power that an object can have over a person.
I mean, that's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit because I'm sure, as you've noticed, there's a market for haunted objects. I mean, if you go to eBay and type in haunted doll, you'll find 1 billion of these things.
Which, by the way, 95% of them probably aren't haunted.
Oh no! I mean, they're definitely not. I mean, I've had so many conversations with people about these because when you meet someone who has a haunted object. In our experience, they respond one of two ways. They either want to get rid of it at all costs, like money is no object. I had a guy just the other day who was so desperate to get rid of something that he was like, he wanted to throw money at me. And I said, no, just put it in the mail. Drop it in the mail and send it to me. They're so desperate, they'll pay you to take it. Or you get the extreme opposite of that, which is someone who would never part with it for any amount of money ever. There's really no in-between there. So if you find something that's in the in-between, that's when you really need to ask yourself, is this really legit?
Yep. No, and you see the just the haunted tag alone on stuff, it kind of drives up the price for people. When we went to that flea market to film, a lady had a doll, one of those it has like a crocheted skirt, a crocheted dress, and you would put it on top of a toilet paper roll on a toilet tank. I don't know if that's like just an old New England thing here, but we used to have those where my grandmother had one on her toilet, and it's just this like a Barbie doll with a crocheted dress.
I know exactly the type.
And so I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, oh, my mother used to have one of those. And I asked the lady, is there anything here on your table that has, that might be haunted? And she's like, yeah, actually, that doll over there. And I said, well, how much is it? And she's like, oh, it's $20, she said, as she was peeling off the $5 price tag that was on it.
Right.
I mean, it's one of the things that, Greg and I lecture a lot about is really kind of critically thinking about what a haunted object is. And usually if someone is trying to sell you something, 99.999% of the time, it's not a haunted object. They're just hustling you because they know that you're going to spend money on it. So, it's one of the things that we talk a lot about is really the ethics of kind of like being a collector of these objects and, and also just not getting taken advantage of because it happens so often. Like, we were saying, all you have to do is type in the word haunted object into eBay and you'll get thousands and thousands and thousands of options. But it's really just stuff that people are, putting on there hoping that someone will buy. And, you've got to be, being curators and caretakers of objects that are legitimately haunted. We are always just trying to help people kind of tap into that critical thinking about this type of stuff and like being, smart about the way that they're thinking about haunted objects.
I always say that the only way to be sure that it's really haunted is if they're offering to pay you to take it instead of asking you for money.
Or if they're never willing to give it to anyone.
Right. Yeah. That's when it gets even more creepy. Like that's those and I'm sure you guys have probably had that happen where you've come and taken something off somebody's hands because they just want to get rid of it, and then they furiously start contacting you trying to get it back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's one of the reasons. One of the biggest rules that we have. We have people who want to. I mean, there's a guy who sent us a couple months ago a Polaroid of this full body, like really strange doll, and he wanted to lend it to us for a while. But the problem is, when they do that, if we give it any bit of notoriety, we've had people who've given us something, it gets a bit of notoriety, and then they ask for it back, and then they sell it. Because that's their plan all along, is they just want to drive the price up. So anything that comes to the museum stays with the museum. That's the rule that we've had to have for the last few years, because it happens. That type of thing happens. People try and take advantage.
Well, I know you guys are coming here, coming up in the spring, but where else can people see the museum coming up in 2019?
God, we're going to be all over the country. We'll be at the Queen Mary with Strange Escapes. We're doing an event in Hawaii with Strange Escapes. We'll be, if anyone's curious about where we're going to be in Arizona for the first time, that'll be cool. But if people are curious, they can just go to paramuseum.com. And everything's listed by state. There's a very good chance that we'll be in a town near you.
And I know that you guys are going to Hawaii. If I can just give you a little bit of advice, if you go into any caves and find any tiki necklaces, don't take them.
Leave them alone.
And don't go surfing if you do take one.
Yeah, you got it. We have lots of reasons to be scared of caves these days.
There's like 5 people right now listening to the show that remember the Brady Bunch and are like, oh, I know what he's talking about. Well, I look forward to getting the chance to hang out with you guys coming up, and certainly everybody should join up with the museum, become members. There's lots of perks for you if you do become a member, and of course you get to be part of something really cool, and all the different levels that you guys have. I mean, I know people who their favorite day of the month, Dana, is when they get their Magic of the Month delivery. So you put a lot of thought into those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're my favorite thing. Hand making magic. I've been practicing magic for 22 years. So the fact that I get to hand make all of these magical goodies for so many people is literally pretty much the best thing on the planet.
Well, there you go, people. You have to go and sign up and join up, and you can get that for yourself. And of course, definitely tune in Friday. Watch Hellier. I can't wait. I know that when I do the show next week and I'm barely awake, I'll have you guys to thank for that. So
anytime.
All right. Take care, Greg and Dana. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having us, Tim.
Take
Good
care.
talking to you.
That is Greg and Dana Newkirk. And again, you can check out all of their stuff, paramuseum.com. You can go to weirdhq.com, hellier.tv to see the show. And also it's going to be on Amazon Prime. And I think, for me, Matt, when it comes to, I love this binge watching world that we live in now. I love that you don't have to wait for the next episode of things to come out. This is probably the one time where I might, judging by what I've seen on the trailer, I might be better off if I could kind of pace myself a little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah. Although that's just more prolonged anxiety.
Maybe
it looks really creepy.
Like you might need a palate cleanser at the end. Well, each episode. Watch one episode, watch the little cartoons.
I've told you what I do, right? When I watch like a horror movie or like a paranormal documentary or something.
No.
Like especially if I'm like alone at night and it's late and like I have to watch a comedy or something before I go to bed. Yeah. Just anything to keep my mind off of it. And even if it's not something that's necessarily scary, but if it's something that's going to lead me to have scary thoughts, basically if it's anything alien related.
Yeah, I'm
absolutely going to have to like watch like a Seinfeld or a Taxi or something afterwards. Just something that's going to... Yeah, I've been watching Taxi on Hulu. Yeah. But just anything that it can be that will kind of clear my mind of that. So, I'm going to watch all 5 parts of Hellier, and then I'm going to watch like some Curb Your Enthusiasm or something afterwards.
Right.
Just that palate cleanser, like you said, to get my mind off it. But... So we'll
until you have a dream where it like just combines the two together.
Don't give me any ideas like that subconsciously. What's really good about this though is like Greg was saying, it's on all kinds of different formats, all kinds of different platforms. So even if you don't have Amazon Prime, you're going to be able to watch it on Hellier.tv.
Right.
So you're gonna be able to watch it on YouTube. You're going to be able to see it on Vimeo. So everybody has, nobody has an excuse not to watch it. And so we can all reconvene next Saturday night and we can talk about it. Although we won't give any spoilers for those of you who have to wait to watch it, but we can discuss it more next Saturday night when we talk about more paranormal things. And we have some pretty intriguing shows coming up, and we have nothing else standing in our way. Tonight was the last night of football. And then we are free and clear until the Red Sox night games start up, which won't be until April. So we'll have plenty of shows coming up for you, including our upcoming 13th anniversary show. That'll be coming up later on this month as well. So stay tuned to SpookySouthCoast.com for all the information about what's coming up. We did, by the way, announce a few events that are coming up. We'll tell you what. I'm going to take a real quick break. We'll play a spot, and then when we come back on the other side, I will tell you all about what is coming up on the Spooky South Coast docket.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
All right. So as I said, we have a couple of things that were announced this week. First of all, I'm going to be all over the place coming up in the next few months with my new presentation, Presidential Paranormal. We'll be talking about all the weird stuff of Washington over the years, Abraham Lincoln's psychic life, the hauntings of the White House, the UFO connections with some of the presidents. So we'll be talking about all of that in Presidential Paranormal. It's coming up. I'll be in I'll be in Berkeley. I'll be in Plymouth. I'll be in Randolph. And I will be in... There's one other place, but I can't think of where it is. Oh, man. Why am I forgetting where the other place is? Berkeley, Plymouth, Randolph. Well, anyway, it's all up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/theothertimweisberg. And also, there's a couple of investigations coming up as well. March 23rd at the Oliver House in Middleborough. We're going to be going back to the Oliver House. For those of you who missed it last month because of the holidays, you'll have your chance to come and check out the Oliver House with me. And then also I'll be leading an investigation on April 20th in Winchendon at the Murdoch Whitney House and the Isaac Morse House. So two big mansions in one night, all included in that ticket. So right now we're running a special. Instead of the usual $99 ticket price, right now they're $75 a ticket. So you can, it's like buying one, getting one half off. So if you want to go get those tickets, you can do so at SpookySouthCoast.com. And of course, we'll have more events coming up later on in the year. There'll be stuff that, the whole Spooky crew will be at, stuff that Stephanie and I will be doing together. And even there might be some legend trips and rumblings sometime in 2019 as well. So stay tuned to our website for all of that, SpookySouthCoast.com. Follow us on Twitter at SpookySC. Follow us on Instagram at Spooky_Southcoast, is it? Yep. So all of those different ways to stay in touch with the show. And, of course, you can always email us, SpookyCrew@SpookySouthCoast.com. And, I'll just plug it one more time. The Spooky South Coast store. It's up on the website. It's open. All kinds of stuff there for you to get. So for all of you who've been asking us for T-shirts, there you go. No excuse now. Go buy them. And then when I see you walking around in a Spooky South Coast shirt, I can follow you home. So until next week, for Stephanie, I'm Tim. We want you all to stay spooktacular.